Yeah, let's go with that one to start. Okay, cool. All right. Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where in the world you happen to be. My name is Christopher Harrison. My Twitter handle is Geek Trainer. That will appear on the screen in just a minute here. And I want to welcome all of you to now week 2 of Code and Coffee, which is a new series that I'm launching here, that I'm starting out and playing around with. Now, one thing that I want to highlight before we get started here is the fact that this is designed to be an exploration, that this is designed to be a conversation. That what I want to do here is I want to continue building a web app that we started last week. Now, if you weren't here last week, don't worry, you didn't miss a whole lot. And I'll also make sure that I share out the GitHub repository as well. So that way, if you want to go clone it and play around and so forth, you absolutely can. So hi, Simone. So, and in fact, that's sort of like a perfect next step here is another very big thing here is this is going to be a lot of interaction. So I want you to ask questions. I want to build. I want to explore that. I've got a couple of goals that I have in mind about what it is that I would like to try and add to this application. But this is not designed to be a demo. This is not designed to be a traditional lecture. That this really is designed to be a, hey, let's go in, let's play, let's learn. That you're going to notice that I'm going to make mistakes. You're going to notice that we're going to get stuck. You're going to notice that we're going to look at documentation. You're going to notice that we might go off on some random tangents here. And all of that's by design, because what I'm really hoping to do here is sort of all learn together and to all just like learn by example. And honestly, I think in a lot of ways, learn the way that a lot of developers tend to learn. That if you're anything like me, and I know I am, that I learn best if I am playing around with something. That I was presenting at as a digital conference yesterday, which, by the way, if you haven't already heard of Start Dev Change, you should absolutely go and check that out. But somebody asked the question, how do you get started? How do you know where it is out of this entire sea of things that are available? How do you know where to get started? And my answer to them, it was to find something that is interesting to you and try to go do that. Hi, Igor. So and that's really actually, it's driven my entire career. That I talk an awful lot about the fact that the way that I got started on web dev was by creating a website for my fantasy football league. True story. And it worked out really well because from a technical perspective, it gave me a lot of experience with like workflows and databases and authentication and like all of those big things that you need to know if you're going to be a web developer. So all of that was right there in the project. But more importantly is it was something that was fun to me. It was something that was interesting to me. So it kept me engaged and it gave me something that I could build towards. And that I think is really a great way to learn anything, is to find something that interests you, that you want to be able to build with it, and then do it that way. That if all that you're doing is simply just like going through a lesson and going, oh, okay, this is what that syntax does. It's sort of like trying to learn a language by just grabbing a dictionary and reading a whole bunch of words. And don't get me wrong, there's going to be some level of that. There's going to be some level of, hey, I just need to get in and learn some words. But you need to be able to do something with it in order for it to actually click. And the same thing is true with programming. And so that's really what I want to do here is I want to get in and I want to play around. So you are going to notice this is going to be very free form. This is going to be very unstructured, that there's going to be a lot of conversation with chat. And I want you to ask questions. I want to interact. I want to learn together. I want to have fun here. So again, this is not designed to be a traditional, let me fire up some slide decks and let me go through a well-rehearsed demo, but instead I'm going to have a set of goals here. I'm going to put them out there. I'm going to try and accomplish them. We might make it, we might not, we might do some different things. Who knows? And that's exactly it. So we want to go in, we want to play, we want to explore some code, and away we go. And Igor asked the question here: is Java going out because of web apps domination? I am the absolute worst person to try and make predictions. It's not a skill that I have. So is Java going out? I don't know. I know that Java still, of course, remains extremely popular. I know that there's a lot of developers that are using it. Where it is, where it's going, I'm not really sure. Simeon, I'm probably pronouncing that wrong, and for that I apologize. Mentions, not really in my experience. Yeah, I see a lot of Java developers out there. So Java still seems to be extremely popular. So yeah. So with that, the whole design here, the whole name of this is Code and Coffee. So go ahead and grab your cup of coffee here. I want to just change this color here. Let's make this about like that. Let's say, there we go. Okay, cool. There we go. Now that shows down at the very bottom. Okay. Alvin asked the question, bad predictions, does that mean I don't do very well in fantasy football? I do okay for myself. I've actually been a member of a league now that's been running for we're on our 26th year now, which is, it's pretty crazy. It's a handful of me and some old college buddies. And honestly, more than anything, it's just friendly competition between a bunch of old friends. And I've managed to win the league 4 times. In fact, if you notice, there's a mug right there in the background that's just full of poker chips. So we give out these huge glass mugs as the trophy, and so I've got 4 of those back there. So that's the one that's most visible, is the one right there, kind of holding up my relatively small record collection, but growing record collection. Said it right the last time. Simeon. Okay, cool. Glad to know. Yeah. So Mallory has thrown in the GitHub repository, and in fact, let me go ahead and bring that up right now. Let's chugga, and I want Code Coffee TS. There we go. Yeah. So thank you, Mallory, for throwing that in there. Mallory is going to be in chat and helping out and so forth. So. Yeah. Good morning, Hugo. First time here, coming from Europe. Well, welcome. Currently holding a manual QA position. Fantastic. Cool. Well, hopefully this will help you out. Okay. So here's our GitHub repository and where things currently sit. So what we decided last week is we decided we were going to build a little website that would allow people to post dogs that were going to be up for adoption and connecting dog lovers. And so we started relatively I don't want to use the word basic, but it's about the best word that I can come up with. I can't come up with a better word here, so I'm just going to go with basic, and we'll go with that. But we started relatively basic. So what we decided to do was let's just create a page that would display out a list of dogs. And so you actually can notice the current state of that. Let me interact here. There we go. So over on the right-hand side, there is the current state of our application. So right now it's love dogs, and then it's got the 3 dogs that are listed right here. So Sammy, Dyson, and Roscoe. So yeah, Amro, welcome. Good morning. Glad to see you. Glad to see you here. Cool. Okay. And the way that our code is currently structured is we are using TypeScript. So if I open up the TypeScript here, whoosh, there we go. What you're going to notice is we've got an array right here of dogs. So I've got Sammy, Dyson, and Roscoe here. So there is our little array of dogs, and then down below we've got a little helper loop that's just going to go ahead and display all of them out. And what you would notice if I throw in another dog here, let's say Pookie, and let's say age of 8, and let's go ahead and hit save, you'll notice that it will automatically then update on the right hand side, because the service that I'm using to manage all of this is just automatically going to refresh. Well, good morning, Mohanraj, and Kigas. Welcome. Cool. Yeah, we're just getting started. So that's what's running. And then on the index here, you probably picked up on this already if you're familiar at all with web dev, is that I'm using Bootstrap. I'm a huge fan of Bootstrap. I know that there are some people who aren't necessarily keen on it because it uses jQuery, or because a lot of Bootstrap sites look the same, and that's fine, and I get that, but at least for me, I don't know. I think it makes it very quick and certainly simpler to lay out a page than doing a whole bunch of CSS all on my own. So I like Bootstrap for that. So it's using Bootstrap, and the HTML. There we go. Welcome, MG. Glad to see you here. Welcome. Cool. And so the existing page that we have is relatively straightforward. So we've just got a Jumbotron up here, and then we've got the section for our dog list. Well, good morning, Jay, and good morning, Isan. Obviously morning for me. It's currently 9:14 out here in, actually sunny Seattle, which is a nice treat for the middle of October. So yeah. And again, if you want the repository, you can find that over on my GitHub. Mallory had thrown that in earlier. I'll throw it in one more time, so that way you have it, and there we go. Cool. Okay. Now, this site is currently deployed out. Let me go to my resource groups here, Code Coffee. It is currently deployed out to Azure Static Web Apps. Once this decides to come up, there we go, Code Coffee. And so you can actually, sound effects help. There we go. You can actually see the site live. You are going to notice that Pookie won't exist because we haven't actually pushed out those updates here. Now, where we started and where we left off last week is we put in the who's what's it. We put in the in the core TypeScript here, we just hard coded in the list of names here, and all of that's fine, but obviously we eventually want this to be dynamic, that eventually we're going to want a database here, we're going to want some server-side code, and all of that. So this is what I want to try and do today, that my goals here are to add an API. Depending on how long that takes, I would love to be able to add in some form of a database. And then we also want to make sure that we deploy out to Azure. Now, fortunately, if we're going to deploy out to Azure, that part's going to be relatively straightforward because we're using Azure Static Web Apps. And if you're not already familiar, Azure Static Web Apps, there we go. If you're not already familiar with Azure Static Web Apps, definitely check this out. That this is a fantastic location to deploy out what are sometimes known as static web apps, also could be called full stack apps, where a lot of the logic that you're going to have is going to be on the client. So what I mostly need is static service space to be able to serve out my HTML, my CSS, my JavaScript, and then I need some separate space to be able to add on the server-side code. And so that's where static web apps comes into play. And what's great is that when it comes time to do the deployment, it's all baked in through GitHub. That if you look at the GitHub repository here, you'll notice that there's an action that's specified right here that basically says that anytime that somebody either pushes into main or PRs into main, that it will then go ahead and deploy out. So my deploy will be straightforward. Adding the database will take some work, and adding the API is going to take some work. So let's start. We've had about 17 minutes of chit chat here. I love chit chat, and again, ask questions, post in chat. Designed to be interactive. Let's get in and let's start adding some stuff. So the way that static web apps works is the server-side component that we're going to get is going to be based around Azure Functions. Azure Functions, there we go. And so if you're not already familiar with Azure Functions, Azure Functions is our serverless compute. And the whole concept behind serverless here is the fact that this is designed to be event-triggered code. So it's only going to execute, it's only going to consume resources when it's running, and that's it. So it will give you some really nice pricing options, and you're also going to notice that this will scale automatically with you. So I don't have to worry about, how many servers do I need? I don't have to worry about setting up farms or anything like that. That all that I have to do is just simply write my code, and that's it. Now, in order to start creating functions, we are going to need a couple of utilities downloaded and installed. And I actually already have them downloaded and installed, so I'm not going to worry about re-walking through this. But I do want to highlight that if this is going to be your first time adding in a function, then you can go in and check the docs. But what you're going to need in a nutshell here, do I have this running yet? I don't. Okay, cool. Chugga. Let me just zoom in. Oops. There we go. And there we go. Okay, yeah. So what you're going to need, if you're going to be using Visual Studio Code, and why wouldn't you? You are going to need the Azure Functions extension installed. You will need Node.js, which you would probably have anyway. And then there's also going to be an additional download that you would need to be able to run this locally. And the doc will walk you through everything that you need for this. So you will need the Functions core tools, and you'll notice that it will show you how to go in and download that and so forth. So I've already got all of that on my system. And so I just want to go in and add this in. And effectively, what I want to be able to do is this array right here, I want to put that out into Azure Functions. So that's what I want to go ahead and put that in with. So MG asked the question, is Azure Static Web Apps free for students? Does it come with the GitHub student benefit? So two real quick things on that. First is aka.ms A4S is we do have a student offering for Azure as well that you can go in and check out, which is called Azure for Students, and that will give you a bunch of free credit on Azure, a bunch of free resources, and so forth and so on. So you can go in and check that out. As far as Azure Static Web Apps, as of right now, because of the fact that this is still in a preview, it is, as of right now, as of the time of this recording, so 9:21 Pacific Daylight Time on October 15th, it is currently free. And again, it's free because it's in a preview mode. There will eventually be a cost for this. Now, please don't ask me what the cost is going to be because I don't know what the cost is going to wind up being. But what I can say is at the core level, I expect this to be very cheap because of the fact that it's using just static blob storage to serve up your HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, and those resources are very cost-effective, very cheap. And then for Azure Functions here, let me go back a couple of pages here and go into pricing. There we go. And what you're going to notice on the pricing for the core tier here is that you get right here a bunch of free execution. So you get, and this little bit of execution time, it's a little bit of a funny bit of math where it's timing how much time you're spending using memory. And so you get 400,000 gigabyte seconds that you can use for free, and up to 1 million executions that you get for free. So that you get through Azure Functions for free. And so when we spin this out then into Static Web Apps, which is going to use Azure Functions as the back end, it's going to use blob storage for, again, those static resources, both of those being very cheap and potentially even free services. I suspect that Static Web Apps at that basic tier is also going to be really cost effective. So I expect that to be extremely cheap as well. So so free for students. How the exact offer is going to be put together remains to be seen. But at the very least, you will notice that you've got that $100 of free credit that you can grab. So cool. All right, sip of coffee. Okay. And so now what I want to do is I want to add in my server-side API. I want to add in my functions. So I'm going to, oh, you're very welcome. Thank you, MG. That's great to hear. I'm going to add in a brand new folder here that I'm going to call API. So this is where my APIs are going to go. And as I mentioned earlier, I've already got my Azure Functions installed. So I'm just going to click on my little Azure button right over here. And then I'm going to click on New Project. And this is creating a brand new Azure Functions project. So I'm going to go to that API folder that I just created here. There we go. Hit OK. And then now it's going to say, all right, cool, choose the project type that you want. So you're going to notice here that Azure Functions does support a bunch of languages. Now, we are using Azure Functions, that part is true, but we are using them inside of Azure Static Web Apps. And the whole thing about Azure Static Web Apps is it is going to manage my Azure Functions piece over here. So as of right now, you do still have a little bit of a limitation on the languages that you're able to choose for doing your functions for static web apps. If you're just creating a function, you could choose whatever language you want. But for static web apps, you're only going to be able to choose 4. That it's going to be Python, JavaScript, TypeScript, and C#. So those are going to be the 4 that you're going to want. So right now, Java's not going to be supported, PowerShell's not going to be supported, potentially in the future, but at least as of right now, it's not. So I'm going to go with TypeScript here. Since we're doing TypeScript on the front end, let's go ahead and keep on doing this for the back end as well. Now, the whole thing about Azure Functions is the fact that this is designed to respond to some form of a trigger. So something happens and it's now going to execute. And one of the things that's really cool is that almost anything that happens in Azure can have a trigger execute in response to it. And you'll notice up at the very top here, I've got HTTP trigger. This basically just makes it like a REST call, that it's only going to execute when I call it. So let me choose HTTP trigger, and I'm going to call this, let's call this dogs for right now. We'll just go like that. It will ask me for an authorization level. I'm not going to worry about that right now. Just going to leave that at anonymous, and then let this do its thing. Okay, cool. Now, what you're going to notice here is this will, let's go in and take a look at the folder structure that we now have here. Is this created, let me just minimize all of this, a brand new API folder with a bunch of different files here. And there's a couple of items that I want to make sure that I highlight here that are all part of this. So first of all, you're going to notice that it created a brand new package JSON file. And the reason that it created a brand new package JSON file is because of the fact that this is really a Node project. This is a Node application. And it is going to need to have the functions package available. So I am going to have to perform an npm install in order to make this work. It's why I'm getting the red squigglies over there. The next thing that you're going to notice is a host JSON file. And that little host JSON file is going to have just some core configuration info for my Azure Functions that I could go in and change around. And then you're also going to notice right here, there's my brand new dogs function. So there's that index.ts file. That's this right here. So that's going to be the logic. And then there's a function.js file, which allows me to configure how this specific function is going to work. So it automatically created all of that for me. So the next step here, because again, I'm getting my red squigglies, is I do need to do an npm install. So let me bring up a brand new console window here, cd API, and then I'm going to say npm install. and then let that do its install. Cool. All right. So now all of that is installed. Now my little red squigglies go away, and now this is looking better. Okay. Now the next part that you're going to notice here is, I think that's a good size. Yeah. So the next part that you're going to notice here is it gives me a lot of just boilerplate code here. So this is the hello world of Azure Functions here. And so what this is doing up at the very top is it's just going to make a real quick log saying, hey, the trigger function processed a request. The next spot is going to be looking for a name either in the query string or in the header body that was sent up. And if we've got the name, then we'll print out, hey, this worked. And if it doesn't have a name, then it's going to say, hey, please pass a name for that personalized response. So there's the bit of just boilerplate code just to show that it works. And I'm going to go in and play around with that in just a second. Now, if you're not already familiar with TypeScript, well, welcome. I'm happy to have you here because I love TypeScript. I find myself really struggling these days whenever I have to go back and use JavaScript. And the biggest reason is this right here. I know. It doesn't look like a lot, but it is. So what I just highlighted here is this is a parameter that we're creating a function. Exactly what we would have expected, right? We've got a function here. So we've got a function. Our function is going to take two parameters. And normally if you were doing JavaScript, it would look a little bit like that. In fact, here, let me get rid of this part as well. That's what it would look like. This is what my function signature would look like. We've all done this in JavaScript. We've all done this. And the problem is I now don't know what context is. I now don't know what rec is. I have no idea. Because JavaScript is weakly typed, meaning that while the variable will maintain the data type of the object, it can be changed at any given time, and there's no way in JavaScript for me to indicate what that data type is. And this becomes, Amro says, it's like C#. Yeah, it does become a little bit like a blend of, say, C# and JavaScript. That right now, I don't know what context is, and I don't know what rec is. And this makes it really difficult for me to try and, create helper functions because I'm always dealing with untyped parameters. I don't know what the data type is. But with TypeScript, similar to how you would do it in Java or C# or C++ or any other strongly typed language, is the fact that I can now indicate what the data type is. So when I say context, I can mark this as the context. And when I say rec, I can then mark that as type HTTP rec. And what's that going to do? Well, that is going to give me IntelliSense. Because now Visual Studio Code is going to be able to look up above and go, oh, that's a context object. I know what a context object is. And so now it will give to me full IntelliSense. And so now I can go in and I can see, for example, here's log. It's such a wonderful toy. So obscure reference for my own entertainment there. So with this, now what you're going to notice is it goes, oh, here's our logger. And it gives me a little bit of help right here in line. Allows you to write streaming function logs. Calling directly allows you to write streaming function logs at the default trace level. That sounds cool. And then you're going to notice that it will allow me to then pass in, say, an array of anything. Typically something like strings is what you would put in, or maybe objects if you had like an error object or something like that. So now I'm getting this great level of IntelliSense, and it makes it so much easier for me to now write my code. So TypeScript for the win here. So MG asks a great question here. So MG asks the question, so in TypeScript, I explicitly tell it the data type of the variable when initializing it. If yes, does that make it faster than JavaScript? Sadly, no. So there's a very important thing to note about TypeScript. Let me TypeScriptlang.org. If you're at all interested in TypeScript, first of all, you can go in and check out TypeScriptlang.org. They've got like great documentation in here that you can go in and play around with. It's fantastic. So the big thing about TypeScript is the fact that it extends JavaScript. And at the end of the day, it's always the JavaScript that runs. The TypeScript does not run. It's the JavaScript that runs. And let's go in and let's look at a real quick example here. So we've already got our client set up here with with some TypeScript. And you're going to notice right here that I've created an interface. So an interface, for those of you who've done programming languages that support interfaces, allows you to define a data structure. So I'm going to have a data structure that's going to be called dog. It's going to have a name. It's going to have an age. My name is going to be a string. My age is going to be a number. TypeScript supports this. JavaScript doesn't. And one very important thing to always remember about TypeScript is the fact that it's never, never, never the TypeScript that runs. It's always the JavaScript that runs. So what needs to happen is this needs to be transpiled or transcompiled down into JavaScript. You can basically think of this analogous to Java turning into bytecode or C# turning into intermediate language, that it needs to be compiled down into the language that is actually going to be run. Now, you might notice here that this is happening for me automatically here, that if I go in and I add in a brand new dog, and I cannot think of a dog name off the top of my head. Let's say Butch, and let's say Butch is 4. There we go. If I save this, you'll notice over on that right side, my little browser window that automatically refreshes, and now it's going to show me Butch there. The reason that is automatically updating, the reason that this magic is happening is because I'm using a little tool called Snowpack. And what Snowpack is doing is it's automatically creating my JavaScript for me. Now, this is a little bit of an older version of the JavaScript, but that's fine. It will still allow me to demonstrate the point here. But it's going to be generating the JavaScript. So here's the JavaScript from an older version of that index TS. And here's what I want you to notice here. There's my const dogs. You're going to notice that there is no interface. And in fact, if I go into TypeScript Lang and I go to the playground here, here you can notice, let me just let me do this, and let me just get rid of all the comments and everything else. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say interface dog, and I'm going to say name string, and then now I'm going to say const dog dog equals, and then let's say name colon Sammy. Okay, cool. So over here on the left is my TypeScript. Over here on the right is my JavaScript. And what you're going to notice on the JavaScript is there's a lot that's now missing. That this right here is now gone. That the entire interface is now gone. All of that stripped away. All of that winds up just becoming syntactical candy because JavaScript doesn't support this. TypeScript does, but JavaScript doesn't. So one very important thing to keep in mind is that it's always the JavaScript that's going to run. So sadly, I'm not going to get better performance out of my JavaScript. Now, you could potentially make an argument here if you really wanted to get overly pedantic that there's a tiny possibility, depending on how I did something in TypeScript, that it might be able to generate slightly better JavaScript than I would be able to write on my own. But that's not at all a consideration here. That's not the reason that you're going to use TypeScript. The reason that you're going to use TypeScript is because it's going to make your life as a developer easier, that it's going to allow you to write your code faster and have less bugs. And that's really what this is all about here. So yeah. So Jay asked the question, is this transpiling? That's exactly what this is. This is transpiling. Robin asked the question, what's the difference between VS Code and VS Code Insiders? The only difference is that the Insiders build is just going to give you access to the beta, the alpha, the new features that are coming along. The Insiders build can be a little bit better just because you are going to get maybe some features a bit sooner than everybody else that's just using the normal build. Personally, for me, I just use the regular build of Visual Studio Code, and I'm just happy. I went through a phase where I just used the Insiders build, and then when I set up this rig maybe about, I don't know, a year ago or so, I just set up VS Code, and I really haven't looked back. So I know that there are some developers out there. There's a good friend of mine, John Galloway, who does a lot of work with ASP.NET, who only uses the Insiders build. You know, totally up to you. Totally up to you as to what you want to do there. Okay, cool. Alrighty. So Amri asked the question, does it support object-oriented programming? It absolutely does. Yep. Yeah, so I could go in and in fact, if we get to doing data today, we'll see a bit more of this. But yeah, I can go in and I can say, you know, class dog model implements dog like that. And then now you're going to notice, hey, it wants to see a name and an age here. So now I have to go in and say, yeah, so I could go and like define a property here for the name. There we go. And then I could do the same for age at that point. So yeah, so it fully supports this, and you can do inheritance and all of the other things that you would want to do with object-oriented programming. And it even supports generics, which is great as well, which I really appreciate. So yeah, but again, you know, another big thing to keep in mind is it's supporting this at developer time. It's not supporting this at runtime. So if you're coming from a Java or C# world, every now and then this is going to surprise you. That every now and then you're going to wind up getting an error message that you wouldn't necessarily have expected, or you're going to get behavior that you wouldn't necessarily have expected. And unfortunately, I cannot come up with a good example off the top of my head here. But you do want to keep this in mind, that all of this strong typing and all of this enforcing of conversions and object-oriented, like all of that is always just going to be at developer time, at dev time. You're not going to see this at runtime, unfortunately. So every now and then you'll wind up getting a little error message that you wouldn't have expected, or getting a little behavior that you wouldn't have expected. But for the most part, if you're coming from C#, if you're coming from Java, this transition into doing TypeScript, again, my own experience here, my own opinion, feels relatively natural. That I'd been doing C# for a very long time, and when I came over to TypeScript, I felt very much at home. It felt very natural to me. About the only real struggle that I've had is every now and then doing imports behaves a little bit differently than expected, but otherwise it feels very natural. Okay, cool. All right, let's see. Yeah, where was I? Back here. Okay, so let me come back over here. So what I want to do is I want to return out a list of dogs. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually just do this. I'm going to just copy this code here, and I'm going to what am I going to do? I'm going to do this. And this. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to update this function here, so that now what we're going to do is we're going to say context log, and let's say return list of dogs. Let's go ahead and create our list of dogs, and then let's set our body here to be dogs. Okay, so all that I did is I took the interface and the dogs that we were using, and I put everything into here, which is exactly what I want. Okay, cool. So one really neat thing here is right down here. So my context res, yeah. So MG mentions if you're having a hard time following, please watch the previous stream. Yeah, absolutely. Go check out the previous stream. But here's one very important thing that I want to make sure that everybody knows is I'm always going to answer questions. So there's going to be the same question asked a handful of times, and I'm always going to take a little bit of time and answer that person's question. That if somebody comes here and they ask a question, they're always going to get an answer from me, because they took the time to watch the stream. They took the time to ask the question. I am always going to answer questions. You can absolutely go check out prior streams. You will see more about what it is that I've done. And in fact, last week, if you check it out, you'll see sort of some struggles that we had as well. But I am always going to answer questions. So if you want to also answer questions, if you also want to contribute information, that's wonderful, and I certainly do appreciate that. But I'm always going to answer questions. So please ask all the questions that you want. I am always going to answer them. So I'll do the chat moderation there. Okay. Now, the other part here is what I'm going to do now is this is going to be me returning back a value. And so this res object here, this response object, allows me to set all sorts of various properties. So what I can do is I can set a body here, which is what I've got, which is going to now be dogs. I can set a header, and I can say content type to be application JSON, because that's what I'm going to be sending down, and so forth. And if you're coming from, let's say, Express, this is going to feel familiar to you. It's certainly not the same as doing things in Express, but like building up a body and a header and so forth, these are things that you chances are have done if you've done Express, if you've done Restify, if you've made REST calls. You've done this. And that's what I'm doing here, is I'm just setting up my response object. This is now going to be what will be returned back. So I'm setting up my body of dogs, and then my header here. I do want to highlight one other real quick thing, and then I'm going to show this in action here, is this is equivalent to me saying dogs : dogs. This, I believe, is supported in ES6, but it also is supported in TypeScript. Is that if you use this bit of shortcut syntax here, where you just say in curly braces the name of something, it will then automatically just become dogs : dogs. So my body is now going to have a property called dogs, and that's now going to have this this array of dogs here. Okay, cool. Whoosh. All right. There's that. Okay. Yeah, that looks good. Okay. I always like to just stare at my code for an extra second before I go in and run it, just because I always get nervous when I run it, especially when I'm doing it in front of an audience, just because I'm like always convinced that that I've missed something. So okay. So this looks good, and so now I'm already inside my API folder. I mentioned earlier that I've got some tooling installed, and so I'm going to say func start host. So my func command, besides just being fun to say, like honestly, being able to just go to the command line and just say func, I don't know, that just, it brings me joy. Maybe that's just me. I think it's kind of cool, so I can just go in and say func. So there's func start host. So start, pretty straightforward, and then host. So what this is going to do is this is going to start up a local Azure Functions host for me. So let me go ahead and run this. Whoosh. Dogs function, error, invalid script file name. Well, that's funny. The script file property is set to a file that does not exist. Huh. That's interesting. It's supposed to just run. Do I need an option to tell it that I'm using TypeScript? So one of the things about functions is it's supposed to automatically just pick up TypeScript here. And start, there's my port, cores, timeout, HTTPS, cert, password, no build, enable auth. Huh. That's interesting. So I ran TSC here, which does a compilation. So it created my dist folder up here. But I shouldn't need that. Huh. Aha. that doesn't look good. Interesting. Yup. Okay. I know what I did wrong. Yeah, it tells me right here. Okay, there we go. NPM scripts. That's always a good indication that I need to run the NPM script. So rather than doing it locally here, let's go in to the package JSON inside of here. Okay, so it says func start. Okay, let's do that. Let's go ahead and say npm run start. There we go. That's better. Okay, that was what I did wrong. All right, see, we're really doing development work here. All right, so now what this has done is this has now started up my Azure Functions locally. So now it's doing everything properly, and so there is my there's my little API, and if I click on that little link there, that will now open up in my browser window, and now we can see that there is the list of all of our dogs. So there's Sammy, Dyson, Roscoe, Pookie, and Butch. So there's the list of all of my dogs inside of my API. Cool. Yeah, that's a good question. So the question is, what's the difference between func start and func host start, or func start host? So basically, here's what it came down to. It came down to just not using npm. So with this, with doing it inside of npm, and I said func start, now it's going to be looking at my package JSON file, and it's going to run that pre-start for me. Because of the fact that I just explicitly said func start host, I was just telling it, hey, just run right now and don't do any pre-work. So that was the mistake that I made. And now this is now that's been resolved. So that was the difference. I should have known better. Hey, again, doing live code here. So yeah, cool. All right. So now I've got an API. Of course, now I want to be able to use it here. So let's go back to my index here. And one of the things that I really like about TypeScript, again, is this typing. Jay asked the question, what does host mean in this context? Host is the server. It's just, instead of it being called server, it's just called host. I suppose what they're trying to do by calling it host instead is Azure Functions are, of course, serverless. And so saying like start server wouldn't make a whole lot of sense, because you're not going to have a server. That, again, the whole design is for it to be quote unquote serverless. So I think that's why they use host instead there. Okay. So let's go back to this interface here. And so one of the great advantages, again, to TypeScript is my ability to be able to declare what a data structure is going to look like. And this becomes especially important when I'm going to be calling external services. That if you've ever written code where you're calling, a REST endpoint or something like that, you've no doubt at some point forgotten what the name of some property is or what the data structure is going to be when it comes back to you. And so by having the ability to declare interfaces, and again, having them be weightless, that remember again that if I go back over here to my TypeScript, you'll notice I declared an interface, that goes away. There's no performance hit whatsoever from declaring interfaces. So when in doubt, just declare an interface, and away you go from there. So I can just go ahead and leave that. I can also go in and like centralize my interfaces, since I'm doing my entire project in one spot, and maybe I will when we continue to build. But for right now, I'm going to be okay with this little bit of duplication because I've only got the one interface. I don't care if it's duplicated. I'm just going to leave it the way that it is. So yeah. MJ asked the question, how's the learning curve when someone switches from JavaScript to TypeScript? So that very much is going to depend. What I am going to say is something like 70% or so of the syntax in TypeScript exists in JavaScript. And that's becoming an even higher percentage. It's probably, even closer to like 80% these days, especially with like ES6 and things like that, where now you've got async await and so forth and so on, just right inside of there. The import mechanisms have been updated a bit in ES6, and that now resembles a bit more of TypeScript. So, depending on how modern your JavaScript development is, it's probably going to make it a bit easier then to make that transition over into TypeScript. What I will say is definitely going to help is if you have done like C# or Java or something like that, because you are going to notice a lot of the same syntax and a lot of the same idioms and so forth. So, how easy is it? What's the learning curve? I think a lot of that really depends on your own personal experience and so forth. At least for me, it wasn't too bad. Like I said, honestly, the biggest place where I the biggest place where I struggled was on doing the imports and things like that, just because it's a bit different than just going const blah equals require yada yada, like you do with a lot of just older Node code there. How to declare an interface in one file and use it in another. Okay, so Igor asked the question. Let's do it. So let me. What do I want to do here? I want to create a folder, I think. Yeah, let's do that. Okay. What do I want to call this? I'm going to get really clever here. Okay. There we go. So let's say interfaces, and is that what I want to do? Yeah. How about shared? There we go. I like shared. Okay, so I'm going to go in and I'm going to say export and then my interface like that. Okay, so what I did is I created a little folder over here called shared. I put that into the root of my application. I added in a brand new TypeScript file called interfaces, and then now you're going to notice that I said export interface and then dog. This, by the way, is different from doing sort of your traditional ECMAScript JavaScript with Node. That normally what you would do is you would do something like module.exports and do it that way. In TypeScript, you just simply say export, and then now that's going to be export. So now that I've exported that, let me go in and say import dog from Why am I failing on this? Yeah, I'm right. Oh, I know what I did wrong. My syntax was right. Import dog from ... whack. There we go. Shared interfaces. There we go. Okay. So now that's how I can go in and do that import, and then I can do the same thing here. Is let's go ahead and say import dog from shared interfaces. Why are you yelling at me? It's not under root-dir. Okay. Yeah, it's yelling at me. Can I just get rid of that? I think I can just get rid of that for now. Yeah, I don't think I need that. All right. We're going to find out. Yeah, it was yelling at me because it was saying, hey, I'm expecting everything to be inside this one root folder. And that's not what I have. That I've got this little shared folder over here. So I just got rid of the root directory. Hopefully that won't come back to bite us later. But we're going to find out. So I think I'm going to be okay. I think I'm going to be all right there. Let me just make sure. Is this still running? Let me just restart this. And just make sure that that's still like running. And let's, maybe do a real quick refresh here. Yeah, there you go. Okay, yeah. So there you go, Igor. So what I did is just created a new folder here that I'm calling shared. There's my interfaces, and then just exporting out the dog, and then just importing it in everywhere else. So that is that. Cool. All right, let's go back over here. All right. Oh gosh, real quick stretch. Let's see. So import dog from there. So now what we want to do is we want to update this code to go get the dogs from our API. So previously, what we had was we had an array of dogs that we were using, and I think we can go ahead and just continue to do it that way. So yeah, let's go in and just say array dog like that. So this is, there we go. So this is just going to create a new empty array that will allow us to store dogs. So now I'm going to need to load those up, and I'm going to use fetch for that. Now the thing about fetch is, stop trying to make fetch happen. The thing about fetch is it's going to be it's going to be asynchronous. So I am going to need to use an async await for this. So I am going to need to create a couple of functions and bury that to make that happen. So I'll get to that in a second. Is my browser window hot loading? How is that set up? Yeah, so it is. So that browser window that you're seeing over on the right up above me, right up there, that is using Snowpack. So if I go to the window that's running my Snowpack server here, so Snowpack is a package manager. Or package manager. It is it's a bundler build tool that will automatically generate the HTML and JavaScript and everything else that you're going to need to deploy out a project. It's got a developer server baked in, and that developer server will automatically just go ahead and rerun the application for you. So it will just automatically just restart that app over and over and over again for me. So that's what's happening there. Okay, so let's go ahead and say main here. Oops. No, don't stop doing that. There we go. And then now I'm going to say async function main. And then now let's go ahead and say const response equals await fetch. And then oh, what do I want? What do I want? What do I want? I want API docs. That's where it's going to be. Yeah, because remember we created it inside of a folder called API, and then we called it dog. So that's where it's going to be. So, oh, you're absolutely welcome, Jay. This is what I'm here for. This is what I love to do. You'll notice that my handle is Geek Trainer. I train geeks. This is what I love to do. So please ask questions. Okay. Const body, or actually const JSON equals await response JSON, and then const, and then actually what I can do is I can say for const dog of I thought I could. Oh, as nope. What I'm trying to do here. There we go. Yeah, there we go. Okay. Here's what I was trying to do is again, TypeScript. What I want to be able to do is always tell it what the data type is at any given point. And so what I thought the syntax was, I thought I'd be able to just simply say the data type right there. I thought I was just going to be able to say :dog and just make it that way, but that didn't work. So here's what's happening is response is going to give me back whatever fetch gave me back. And that's going to include like the header information, the status code, and all of that stuff. But it's also going to include the JSON payload. And so that's really what I'm interested in. So that's the next thing that I have to go grab. Now, inside of that JSON payload is going to be an array of dogs. And we can confirm that by just going back to the little browser window, and you're going to notice there's the body. So it's giving us back that array of dogs. So now I can know that that's there. So this right here, this little bit of TypeScript, this little as, what this is doing is this is doing a data type conversion for me. Now remember again, this is just syntactical candy. So this, if I was writing, say, C# or Java, what would happen at this point is if this was running and if it turned out that dogs was not the right data type, what it would do is it would give me a conversion error, that it would give me a casting error. It would tell me, hey, dogs cannot be converted to an array of dogs. Okay, but remember, JavaScript does not do interfaces. This is very important. JavaScript does not do interfaces. So when this is compiled out to JavaScript, this right here, that entire thing is going to go away. It's all going to be gone. And so, yeah, so basically what I'm doing is typecasting there, but just, again, it's going to be a little bit different because this is at design time that I'm telling my editor that, hey, I'm expecting this to be an array of dogs. If this would fail in Java, if this would fail in C#, I would get a conversion error. It would tell me, hey, I can't convert dogs to be an array of dogs. What you get in TypeScript / JavaScript, because remember again that it's the JavaScript that's going to run, is it would give me an error telling me, hey, that the property name does not exist here. So it's going to give you a little bit of a different error message. So you always have to remember that all that you're seeing here, and again, I love TypeScript. I always program in TypeScript if I can when I need to do JavaScript. But you just always need to keep that in mind, that it's always going to be a little bit different there when you're in that environment. Okay. In any event, let's say dogs append, push. That's right. And then add in the dog. Okay, cool. So that will then be loaded up, and then now let's go ahead and add in this. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to create a function here, display dogs. Let's put this into a function. One of the things that I learned years and years and years ago when I was a much younger developer is that your function should never be longer than a screen. And granted, my screen size is relatively small, but I still like to try and keep that. And I know that this isn't as big of a thing anymore, that if you look inside of JavaScript and Python, some various projects, that you'll see just these huge functions with subfunctions and all sorts of different things, and that's fine, and I know that that's the way that a lot of developers like to write these days, but the old habits of just creating helper functions and keeping my functions nice and small just never dies. And at least for me, I think this makes my code more readable. I think that this makes it more maintainable. That now if I extract this out and I now call this like load dogs, now my code is much more readable. That now I know that this is going to load the dogs from the server, and I know that this is now going to display the dogs. So, it just, for me, I think that code is much easier to read than just having all of that from top to bottom. So I don't know if that, just makes me old. I don't know if that makes me a little bit weird, but that's how I like to write my code. Okay, cool. All right. Now, when I save this, I'm 98% certain that all of my code is correct. But you are going to notice here that it is you are going to notice that it's not going to refresh here, and there's a reason for that, which I'll get to in a second. I just want to answer Jay's question here, which is that TDD, or test-driven development, would create small functions, which is much more maintainable. I agree with that completely. Creating those small maintainable functions. I am all for that. And then the next question is writing tests for TypeScript. And I'll openly admit it's been a little while since I've done unit testing in my dev. That unfortunately I've been working on a lot of other little projects where we weren't doing a whole lot of unit testing. Say what you will there. And so I'm very much out of the practice. But you can do a couple of different things. So one thing that you can do is you can continue just to use like Mocha and all of the other testing tools that you would normally use with JavaScript, because you can just set up a little bit of a pipeline here where what happens is your TypeScript gets converted into JavaScript and then your tests just run off of that. But there is a whole series of other utilities, and I can't remember them off the top of my head. So you can use TS Node. You can use, so he mentions TS Node here with using Mocha and Chai, which you can absolutely do. But there is another framework. Yeah. Oh, it was right there in front of my face. Jest. Yeah. There's another framework called Jest that natively supports TypeScript that you could go in and take a look at. So Jest can do that for you, and it will do it using that same similar syntax that you're used to, of using that describe and test and so forth there. So you could go in and do it that way. I want to say there's another. Does Jasmine do it natively though? I can't remember. Yeah, okay. I think it makes you bundle it and convert it. Oh no. Yeah, there you go. Jasmine TS. Okay, yeah. So go take a look at Jasmine. Go take a look at Jest. Both of those will do that. And you might even be able. There might even be a plugin there that will allow you to do like Mocha Chai and TypeScript natively. But I don't think that there is. Maybe there is. So, yeah, like something with TS Node, you could do it. So there's a few different ways. So there you have it. Okay, cool. All right, back over here. Yeah, so here's what I've got running. So what I've got running on 8080 is my app, and I've got over here on 7071 my function. So I've got my function and my app running in two different spaces, and I want to fix that. I want to make sure that we are, well, I don't want to put them both on the same process because they are going to be different, but I want to make sure that we're able to properly call over there. And the way that I'm going to do that is by using a proxy. So there we go. So over here, back on Snowpack, and remember that what I'm doing is I'm using Snowpack to be my dev server, is I can set up a proxy where I can say, hey, all requests that are supposed to go to API should really be routed over to, and then wherever it is that they should be, they should be routed to. So I'm going to grab that little bit of code here. I'm just going to copy that. And then you'll notice that I've got a Snowpack config JSON here that I can put this into. So there's my mount. And then now, I'm curious. Just going to tangent here real quick. Is there a Snowpack extension? There isn't. Okay. It's worth a look. Okay. In any event, let's go in and paste in my proxy. And I want to forward any requests for API to 127.001/API. Okay. And again, the reason that I know that that it's 7071 is because there. So it shows me that right there. So localhost 7071 API docs. Cool. All right. So that is all saved. That is all good. Mount app. Yep. Okay. So I do think I'm going to need to restart this. Okay. Uh-oh. And I'm getting an error message. That's fine. Unexpected end of JSON input. Okay. So, all right. So it's giving me an error message on loading API dogs. Why are you not using the proxy? Proxy. It's right there. Do I not have it? Oops. I did save this. That's interesting. I'm curious why it's not picking up my proxy. Okay, so it's not forwarding my request, and I can see that right here. It's telling me that it's still going to 8080. Which is not where I want it to go. I want it to go to 7071. I know it says 72 up there, but that's okay. Still the same space. Let me see. What am I forgetting? Can proxy request from the dev to external URLs /API and then the location that you want to go to. Okay. So and that is inside my config, and this is, yep, okay, that looks good. So proxy, there's the local path, there's the remote path. I come over here, proxy, oh, wait a minute, no, did I get my code wrong over here? API dogs. Interesting. Okay. Let's, in theory, oh, I know what I did wrong. I forgot my port number. 7071. There we go. Let's try it. Let's try this again. There we go. That looks so much better. Okay, cool. And then I think I'm just going to need to refresh this. Give me a second here. Talk amongst yourselves. I'll give you a topic. The Industrial Revolution was neither industrial nor a revolution. Discuss. There we go. Okay. I just needed to refresh it on OBS as well there. So cool. All right. So this is now using that that remote server. So there's Sammy, Dyson, Roscoe, Pookie, and Butch. And if I want to prove this here, let me go into my function here. And yeah, let's go ahead and let's just put it up at the top. Let's go ahead and let's name a dog Azure. There we go. And then I'll make Azure 7 there. And then now I am going to need to make sure that this is restarted. I'm just restarting my server. And then if I come back over to my browser window, hit refresh. Oh, it's still doing its thing here. I did save it, Azure. Yeah, okay. Hit refresh. You worked 2 seconds ago. 2 seconds ago, you worked. Oh, I wonder if it's like caching something here. Hold, please. All right, let's make sure that my function is serving up the right data. I'm positive it's just caching something just to bug me. That's so weird. My file is saved. I'm not losing my mind. It's right there, right? I'm not losing my mind. I've added this in. I'm in the right spot here. It's right there. Hitting save, 100 times is what makes the difference there. That's hilarious. All right, sip of coffee. Let's try this again here. Yeah, something worked a second ago might not work the next second. Yeah, very familiar experience. This is so funny. Like it's right, like I'm not losing my mind. It's right there. You know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna inject an error here. Oops. Okay, that's good. All right. So now let's get rid of that. Yeah, Amro has the same experience. That's good to hear. It's good to know that I'm not alone here. It's a shared pain that we're having here. That is absolutely fascinating. Let's get rid of one. And now let's try this. Huh. Let's get rid of the dist folder here. And now let's try and run that again. Oh, now you're giving me an error message that it doesn't exist. Why? Oh. Oh, that's funny. I think I know what my problem is. I think it's... Remember when I got rid of that root directory? And I said, I don't think I'm going to need it. I think this is now what's coming back to bite me here. Okay, so let's add this back in. So my root directory of dot, and then let's maybe add in shared here. Is this nope. Huh. Okay. So here's what's happening. Is it's yelling at me because if we remember from before, what we did was we did this little thing where we went, up a couple of levels, and then now it's yelling at me because it's saying, hey, this isn't under the root directory, and so we don't know where to go find that. Maybe if I do this, I need to go maybe down one more level. Put that on my include? Nope, doesn't like that. Okay. Huh. So this is a funny TypeScript thing. It's yelling at me because it can't find my interface. And I'm trying to help point it at where it should go, and it's still yelling at me because of this root directory. And I don't want to make the root directory the root of everything, because that's not where... actually, hold on. Hold, please. Let's maybe try this. Ah, ha, there's a root ders. There we go. Let's go. Beautiful. Okay, let's see. That already looks better. Now let's try to rerun this. Nope, that didn't do it. Nuts. All right. Let's see. Right. Okay. You know what I'm going to do for right now is, I think what I'm going to do is I just want to make sure that we can get this to build first. And the way that I'm going to do that for the time being is I'm just going to copy and paste that, that interface. And then, oh wait, actually, hold on. I'm gonna try something else. Nope, it's not where the debugger should look. How about if I now do this? Is I now say on the include dot. Will that do it? Nope. Okay. All right, fine. I don't know quite how to solve this, if I'm being honest. So what I'm going to do for the time being is I'm just going to copy and paste the interface. And we can come back to it later. I don't want to just stop and do nothing but debug here. I don't think that's the best viewing experience. So let me do that, and then let's go back to my config, and then let's just set my my root directory, root dir back to that. So yeah, solving when it goes wrong is much more useful than watching when it works flawlessly. Well, I appreciate that, Dan. I am happy to know that that my pain and struggles is helping you. So okay. And then let me just get rid of this include. Okay. Now let's try this. Will you at least go back to where you were? There we go. Okay. So that looks better. And now there's Azure. Okay. All right. So I'm still having an interface issue, which I'll have to figure out in a little bit, but that's all right. We can go back and maybe take a look at this afterwards. Yeah, so now it's returning Azure. So is the API now returning the dog named Azure? Now it is. It's not set up exactly the way that we want, but yeah. Could we use Postman? Sure. I'm just using the browser and pointing directly at it. So that's what this is doing right here. It's just pointing straight at the function and just printing it out that way. So yeah, we could have used Postman, but this worked just as well. Okay. In any event, let's now go back over here. Let's restart that dev server, and then there's Azure. So, okay, and I can do that on my browser window as well. I just need to do a real quick update on it. There we go. Okay, all right. I'll have to figure that out. You know what I'll do? Let me push this out, and then see that it's going to be something on the TS config, and I know that I'm going to be able to do this. I just can't remember what option it is that I want on the TS config to do that. So yeah, it's somewhere in here, but I can't remember. I just can't remember what it is that I need, but that's all right. Okay. In any event, there it is, and now it's returning back. It's now returning back Azure. So yep. Okay. So let me do the deploy here. So what I'm going to do for my deploy is I'm going to be a good developer here. So I'm going to say git checkout tick B add API. Okay, and so now we'll go ahead and create that for me, create a brand new branch, and then I'm going to say git status. And then it's got my API, my shared, and then everything that's been modified. That all looks good. And I'm just going to make sure, I'm pretty sure I've got a git ignore. I do. Okay, cool. All right. So now I'm going to say git add everything, git commit m added Azure function, and then git push u origin, and then add API, and we'll let this push out. Okay. Do you have any coffee left? I do. Okay, so what I did there is sort of the stock standard that we would expect. Whoops, that was not where I wanted to go. Here's where I wanted to go. Okay. By the way, they are mowing outside because they do that every Thursday morning, just because. So if you're going to start to hear some like lawnmower noises and things like that, I apologize. So, okay. In any event, what you're going to notice is through GitHub is that I created a brand new branch and I pushed this out. Now, I want to finish the deployment out here to Azure Static Web Apps. And the way that I'm going to do this is really the way that I would want to do anything like this, which is I want to PR and then eventually merge. So I'm going to click on my compare and pull request, and I'm going to click on create pull request. And I'm just going to leave it here. So I'm not going to merge it. I'm just going to leave it here. And if I go into my actions here, and this action was created by Static Web Apps right here, you're going to notice that it's now running. And if I open up this build and deploy job, this is now running the npm installs and doing everything to help get all of this ready for deployment. So there it goes, and it's doing its thing. And you could go ahead and watch it there. It is going to give a couple of error messages, like just enough to make you nervous and think that it didn't work. And then eventually, if I get all the way down to the bottom here, chugga. It's still uploading. Now I'm out of coffee. That's sad. There we go. So it's now told me that it's all been deployed out. And then, no, don't do that. I don't want you to close that window on me. Yeah, right there. So now it tells me deployment complete, little happy face. It's always good to have happy face. And then now it's giving me a link to visit my site. Now I'm not going to click on that. But instead, what I want to do, first of all, zoom out. But the second thing that I want to do is I want to go back to my static web app here. So this is what's sitting on Azure. Here's that core URL. And if I click on this, what you're going to notice is no Azure. Now, this I was expecting. And the reason that I'm not getting Azure here is because of the fact that this is still showing me what's live. This is still that main branch there. So that's why that's still showing that. I realize, has my mic been spiking this entire time? I just noticed down in OBS that it was hitting red. So I apologize if my mic was spiking. I usually do a better job of keeping track of that, but it might have been spiking for a while. I apologize if it was. Dan asked the question, did I miss something? When did I set up the config action? Yeah, so this is actually a project that we've been building now over a little bit of time. And by a little bit, I mean that we spent a couple of hours on it last week. And so last week, what we did towards the end is we set up Azure Static Web Apps. So Azure Static Web Apps uses GitHub Actions to do the deployment. So when I created this, it then created that workflow. And so here is where I can here's where I can see this. So I created this last week. And if you want to know more about static web apps, there we go. You can check out the docs. You can also see what I did last week and check that out. But there's more about static web apps that you can see there. So good. And thank you, Jay. Good to hear that that I was sounding good there. So cool. All right. Now then, let's go into environments. So what you're going to notice back inside of my static web apps here in environments is that I've got my production, and then now I've got my staging. And if we take a look at this, what you're going to notice is that that branch name is add API. And if you were listening in, if you were watching, you may have noticed that when I set up my my branch, that's exactly what I called it. I called it add API. So this new staging environment was created because of the fact that I had PR'd into that. So I haven't merged yet, but I have PR'd. And so now if I click on this link, it would take me to the pull request, which is not where I want to be. But if I click over here on browse, this will now take me over to a new URL. And I don't think I'm going to be able to zoom in on this and have it work, unfortunately. But you should notice right there that you're seeing the mango water, which is going to be the name of my new business, a hex value, and then -1. That -1 is now showing me that staging environment. So I can see that right there. And so now I can see the Azure, Sammy, Dyson, and Roscoe. And so I can do a little bit of a side-by-side comparison here. Let me just put this here. There we go. That looks good. So yeah, so over here is the original. Over here on the left, this is my staging. This is the one that's now using that Azure function. Cool. So now the question becomes, well, how do we then merge that over? Well, the way that we merge that over, sort of gave it away there, is by merging the pull request. So let me go back to GitHub, go back into the PR here, and let me click on merge and confirm merge. And then let that do its thing. And so now this is doing the merge into my main branch. And if I go into my actions here, I can now see this merge right here. And this is now running. And so now what this is going to do is this is going to take all of that code from my now new main branch. It's going to build that, and then it's going to push that out. And because of the fact that the PR is closed, this staging branch will go away as well. So this will just take it a minute to do its thing. And let this finish out here. Chugga, chugga, chugga. Moving your mouse makes it go faster. Okay. I see that I'm getting close to time, and I do have to bail, unfortunately, at the top of the hour here. So I do have to bail in just a couple of minutes. So I'm going to go back and look a little bit at the TypeScript offline, and I'll come back next week with the update. There is a way to modify the TS config to also tell it to look in the right space for that. I cannot remember for the life of me what that is. So it might be like under references. I thought it might be under files or something like that. I can't remember what the option is, unfortunately, and it's just going to take me a little bit of time to go in and dig that up. Fortunately, like I said, the docs are really good, so I can go in and start to look at how to go in and configure that. Where is, project configuration. Here I can do this. Yeah, so there's there is all the different items here. There's the root list of files, my include, my exclude. I wonder if maybe what I did, if I set my root directory as dot and then I set my include as the one spot, I wonder if that'll work. I'm going to take a look at that in a second. In any event, though, let's finish the deploy. So here's my deploy. That all looks good. If I come back over here and hit refresh, chugga chugga, and now you're going to notice that there is there's now my new main branch. It's now showing me over here on staging, no results. This is still that old staging environment, which I'm going to let sit there for just a second. This is over here on the right side, this is the original. So now if I hit refresh, now you're going to notice that there is Azure, Sammy, Dyson, Roscoe, and Pookie. So there it all is. And if I go back to, there we go. Go back to my staging and hit refresh. Now you're going to notice that it gives me a 404 because that branch is now gone. So there it is. Cool. So at least we got two of those done there. So on our goals there, we did get to add an API. So let's. We can put a check mark next to that, and then on the deploy to Azure, we can at least give ourselves a check mark next to that, or two of them apparently. There we go. So we got two of the things done. We didn't get to add a database, so we'll start to take a look at that next week. I don't know if Mallory, if maybe you have the link handy for next week, but if you feel like throwing that in there, that would be perfect. Set that up as my root, and then I'm going to say for my include, I'm going to say AP. Whoops, that was not what I wanted to do. Just going to try this real quick in the background here. I'm just going to see if I can't. Just going to see if I can't get this to do what I want it to do. Hey, look at that. Let's make sure that this is doing what I want it to do, though. I'm just going to stop this real quick. And well, it's at least with the interface there, it's doing it. Let's see. Let's start here. Let's see if I can at least get like a new dog update to display here. Let's see. Refresh. Nope. Okay. Never mind. It's still not doing what I want it to do. Nuts. Let's see. How about if I did maybe API? Nope. Does not like that. It doesn't end in a recursive wildcard. Let's see. Does not like that. Does not like green eggs and ham. It does not like it. TypeScript it is. Nope. Okay. All right. I'm gonna have to go back in and play around with it, just as the lawnmower goes by here. So I'm not sure what option it is that I need, but it's something, and I'll dig into it a little bit offline, and then when we come back next week, we can do that. So yeah, so there's the URL to join next week. We did at the very least check off 2 of the items. So we did get an API up and running. We did get to deploy to Azure. So all of that is wonderful. The next step is going to be to add in a database, and we'll do that next week. I'll probably do that with Mongoose. I really like Mongoose. I'll probably do it with that. I might do it with the core Cosmos DB APIs. But I'll probably just stick to doing it with Mongoose, because I think that's what most people wind up using. But in any event, I do want to thank everybody for tuning in. You can find me on Twitter. I'm at Geek Trainer, and again, going to be back next week. Going to keep building on this. Definitely check out Azure Static Web Apps, and say hi to me on Twitter, and I hope to see you back here next week. So thanks again. Goodbye. Enjoy your Thursday or Friday, depending on where in the